Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Mad Science Lab on the Fantasy Football Universe. I am Aaron St. Dennis at FF Mad Scientist on Twitter, joined today by Dave Richard at Dave Richard on Twitter. I always find you at Ask FFT. I'm not. Is that just you've turned the company or the company Twitter into your own personal, or how does that work, Dave?
We created the hashtag several years ago, and people use it to try and talk with us and ask their questions, usually on Sundays at like the most inopportune times.
Well, of
And
course.
I wanted to let people know that's the hashtag to use. I usually now during the off season, it's different, Aaron, but in season, I skip over questions I get that don't have that in there. So
Yeah.
happy to help people that pay attention. And if you're paying attention to fantasy football today, our podcast, our live stream on YouTube, everything that we do, you know that our hashtag is hashtag Ask FFT. And so the least I could do for people who use that hashtag is answer the question, try and help them out. That's why
I've had a few times where I've tried to find you on Twitter, and I'm like, is this the FFT account? I'm like, I maybe does Dave have another account? I just messaged you, and sure enough, it was you. So,
of course.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me today. I guess we don't have to tell everyone where you're from. You just did it already.
Sure.
You are actually, even during the off season, I don't listen to as many podcasts. I have a rotation currently at work of two. One of them, well, three, I guess, if you count FFT and FFT Dynasty as two separate podcasts. The other one is Something to Wrestle. So,
okay. We're in good company then.
Yeah.
If
you guys for football.
Conrad and Bruce.
Yeah, you have listened to it yourself, apparently. I love it.
You got it. I have. I was just trying to think of something catchy that they say, and I blanked on it. All I got was pronouns, pal, and that would have made no sense whatsoever. We'll see if we can use that a little bit later on in the show, Aaron.
Now, if you can do like a Jerry Jarrett or Jim Cornette impression, you'd be right on, but I can't. I don't know about you.
Oh, on the spot, I'd be nervous to do it because I think I'd sound terrible.
Yeah. You don't want to go viral with that. So, yeah, smart move.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, Dave goes viral in the middle of July, not for a football take, but for attempting a Jim Cornette impression.
Impersonating corny, right?
Yeah, there you go. All right, well, let's get into it here. We're here for the Chicago Bears. The quarterback situation is brand new. We've got Caleb Williams going QB 16 right now in ADP. This is all on the FFU fantasyfootballuniverse.com website, powered by Fantasy Pros here for these charts. Backups are Tyson Bagent, who I was much higher on as a, non-big school rookie, but obviously he's the backup here behind the real rookie. And then they've got Britt Ripien. I never say it right. What are your thoughts here? I guess it's all Caleb or bust for the Bears.
I mean, I know that it seems that way. And Aaron, I let you in on this before I came on the air. I was at Bears minicamp, so I got to watch this team practice. And there were times where Tyson Bagent looked pretty good. Like by the time we got to day 3 of Bears minicamp, both he and Caleb Williams were routinely beating the defense in 7-on-7 and 11-on-11 red zone drills. So I'm picturing this horrible world where Caleb Williams misses time and Tyson Bagent goes under center and everybody panics about what it means for their DJ Moore shares and their Keenan Allen shares and their Rome Odunze shares. And I think I would say, yes, expect a reduction, but it's not going to go horribly because I think Tyson Bagent is capable of stewarding the offense for a few weeks, just as he did last year. I guess he wasn't as good as Justin Fields. It's kind of a question mark that I'm ending that statement with. But I think he actually, from what I saw in minicamp, really wasn't terrible. And so I think you'd be okay still starting those guys with Bagent. But hopefully it doesn't happen. Hopefully Caleb Williams is fine. Caleb plays 17 games, and we don't have to even entertain the Tyson Bagent question, sir.
Well, let's hope. I liked him coming into his rookie season, but I've been terrible at projecting Bears players, apparently, which reminds me, I owe you an apology. We did this Bears talk about a year ago. I was the champion for Roschon Johnson, RB1. You reined me in a bit, and I had some skepticism. I was wrong. You were right. Roschon was not as good as I had hoped. Kel surprise. My bad.
So now where are you on Roschon this year?
You know what? He's kind of been the forgotten man for me, even in Dynasty. I never really target him, but I'll get down into the later rounds and I'll be like, oh, Roshan Johnson, yeah, that's still a thing. So I grab a few shares, but bringing in DeAndre Swift, like if it was just him and Khalil Herbert, I'd be all in. But bringing in, I guess you want to call it a talented veteran. I know he's had some injury issues. That's a great sign for their faith in Roshan. So
Right. Shade at DeAndre Swift from the mad scientist.
well,
Okay.
I just he's kind of a veteran, but he's a young veteran, and he's talented, but he's never on the field. So I liked
Okay.
him in Detroit. I don't so much love him now, but
Dare we call him a young grizzled vet? I would say that Swift is, listen, again, just another observation from Bears minicamp. Swift is going to be the lead back, but that's not to be meant as workhorse back. And as long as they've got Khalil Herbert and Roshan's going to be there, this is a three-headed monster. And
that's
I
what
think
I fear.
Roshan's got a role as the 2-minute back, the hurry up offense back, maybe even the passing downs back. We'll wait and see how that shakes out. But I would not be surprised if people are a little disappointed in the usage from week to week for DeAndre Swift. And no one's really drafting the other two guys. But let's say, terrible world again. Somebody misses time. I know, shocker, DeAndre Swift misses time. I know you can't believe that. But in that scenario, I don't think it all falls in Khalil Herbert's lap. I think Herbert and Roshan would take that workload together. Not necessarily believing that one would be great and one would stink. Not sure how that would shake out between the two of them.
None of that surprises me as we transitioned here to running back. The only part that I was a bit surprised by out of what you said was you don't see Swift as the pass catcher. That's pretty much when he was in Detroit. That's how I viewed him. He was the pass catcher. Then, he always had somebody else there. Was Montgomery there, I think, for his last year? Montgomery was the running downs and Swift was the pass catcher. I feel
think
like they were
Montgomery's
there a
first
year.
year there was last
Yeah.
year.
Was
So,
it? Okay. Well, I always viewed him as the pass catcher and, Jamal Williams or whoever the heck it was as the hammer. You
sure.
don't view Swift as the pass catcher here?
Well, let's not confuse the pass catching role with a guy who can catch passes, because it is
Fair enough.
absolutely in DeAndre Swift's profile that he is a good pass catcher. Who's to say he doesn't catch passes on first or second down? When I say a passing downs running back, I mean like an obvious passing down situation. It's 3rd and 8. Okay. The Bears aren't running the ball on 3rd and 8. 3rd and 15, they might, because it could be a draw play. 2nd and 10. Sometimes teams will run it on 2nd and 10, just, donate it down, as Pete Prisco would like to say. But that would probably be a gig for Swift more so than Roshan Johnson. So it really just depends on I guess it might just depend on the whim of the offensive coordinator. But certainly in specific situations, I think they've got roles for the players, and it just makes it easy for them. So minute 55 left in the second quarter. Bears have the ball. They're looking to get downfield as quick as possible. Based on what I saw at minicamp, it was Roshan in that role and not DeAndre Swift. By the time we get to September, could be Swift in that role. Could be Swift and Roshan rotating in that role. But the mere fact that it wasn't Swift in that role at minicamp makes me nervous about saying, oh, yeah, Aaron, don't worry about it. He's going to catch every target from that Bears backfield. He's going to have 60 grabs this year. Can't say that. I don't think he'll see anything like that.
This backfield's going to be a nightmare is what I think. And it was Jamal Williams in 2022 with him, not David Montgomery. And that was the 17 touchdown Williams season.
Let me tack on an additional wrinkle to that comment that you made, saying that this backfield's going to be a nightmare. When Southern Cal was at the goal line last year, they called Caleb Williams' number a bunch. I believe he scored on 9 of 11 attempts from the 1-yard line. So not only do they have all these different running backs that could play multiple roles, like Khalil Herbert is a good runner. He could work on a rushing down. Roshan Johnson's physical. He could work at the goal line. But they got a quarterback who's proven to do it well himself. So there's a lot of different options that the Bears can go with when they're in the red zone and then inside the 5. And it's not going to be DeAndre Swift every single time hammering for touches, nor was it last year in Philadelphia, as you guys know, with Jalen Hurts having so many scores.
These are the teams I hate for fantasy. You go from a Detroit where the entire fantasy output is 4, maybe 5 players. And then you go to Chicago where there's 3 running backs and 3 receivers. You've got 2 tight ends. This one's messy. I like the consolidated targets and the consolidated touches.
Yeah.
I guess let's move on to that wide receiver room. That is probably the most hype I've seen out of a Bears receiving room in years. We've got DJ Moore not newly acquired, so it's Keenan Allen newly acquired. The recently drafted Rome Odunze, Tyler Scott, DeAndre Carter, Velus Jones Jr., who is 27, and I think he was 25 when he was drafted, and Colin Johnson. So really, it's 3 of them here. What are your thoughts here? Do you have a wide receiver 1? Is it DJ Moore? Or?
I think DJ Moore will be the wide receiver 1. I think that he's that blend of explosive and savvy and great hands and experienced that Keenan Allen doesn't quite have as much of anymore, and Rome Odunze isn't old enough to have by comparison to DJ Moore. I do think that Moore will lead this team in targets. Yeah. I don't think it'll be as many as he had last year, which means I would expect a reception reduction for DJ Moore. But I think he can be efficient, and I think he can still score a lot of touchdowns. And he was a guy who was winning in those red zone drills that I talked about too, Aaron. But if there's a guy that's going to get 8 targets per game, if it's 8 targets per game, it's DJ Moore. I think Keenan Allen, who we're so used to seeing getting double-digit targets per game every single year, I think he's the one that takes a huge step back. Could be in the neighborhood of 6.5 targets per game. Not to say that he's slow, because he looked pretty good at minicamp, but he was the one receiver who didn't seem to be as in sync with Caleb Williams. He seemed a little bit, the timing was off. I think that's just the best way to put it. Now, that's something that can be fixed. And in fact, by day 3 of minicamp, it did get fixed a little bit. And by the time we get to training camp, 2 weeks into training camp, I would imagine they'll be on the same page. And it's great for Keenan Allen that he's no longer the de facto number 1 on his team, and that the coverage on him, man, he's going to be open often. Like, I'm curious to see, because of his route running, Aaron, like, what's the average yards of separation for Keenan Allen this year, because he's not going to be defended like he's a number 1 receiver like he was in LA. And that might make you excited about him, but he's not getting 10 targets per game here. I think 6.5 to like 7.25 is where he'll live. And he definitely moved well, but he's not as explosive as DJ Moore. He's not as explosive as Rome Odunze. And he's going to work the middle of the field. He told the media while I was there, yes, he's going to work the slot. He's their slot receiver in 11 personnel. He will be an outside receiver when they're in like 22 personnel or 12 personnel. Anything with multiple tight ends on the field, Aaron, Keenan will stay. Rome Odunze will not be on the field. So I think that kind of helps them a little bit. Maybe that edges that target share up a little bit more. But I think they're going to be in 11 personnel so much that it doesn't really matter. And so Keenan Allen, I view as more of like a number 3 fantasy receiver. Okay. Maybe he's got potential in full PPR to finish in the top 22, somewhere in that range. And those are the 2 veterans. And then you get to Rome Odunze. Should I just keep rolling, or do you have a question?
Yeah, no, keep going.
Okay. So Odunze did have great chemistry with Caleb Williams. So the point where when I talked to Odunze, I asked him, how long have you known this guy? Because it seemed like they've known each other for a while, maybe practiced for a long time. And it's not true. They've really just started to get to know each other through the draft process. And then once they both realized they were going to Chicago, they worked out together. They were both on the West Coast, and it just worked out the way that it did. Odunze is awesome. Really smart. Shane Waldron talked to me, spoke highly of him, compared his mental aptitude to Cooper Kupp, to JSN, as far as a receiver who they're not spoon feeding. He's really understanding the offense, and I saw it firsthand. His route running was great. There was a play where Caleb Williams had to leave the pocket. He was kind of flushed out of it. He did that a ton at Southern Cal. Rome Odunze knew where to run. He knew the assignment on what to do in a scramble drill. And as Caleb Williams was falling out of bounds, and remember, there's no actual hitting, so it's not like he was about to get hit. He throws across his body 20 yards downfield, hits Rome Odunze where he's catching the ball up here. I'm putting my hands up above my head. And it would have been a 20-yard gain. It was a really good play. So I would say that Odunze is nearly as explosive as DJ Moore, certainly more explosive than Keenan Allen, just doesn't have the experience. And I worry about his target share. And so when we're thinking about drafting Odunze, do not reach for him. I think the only way he can become a legitimately startable fantasy wide receiver, one of your first two wide receivers, is if something bad happens to Moore or Keenan Allen along the way. But Odunze himself told me, Aaron, he's at least a flex.
Oh, I like it.
His words out of his mouth, meaning he's played fantasy. He knows what fantasy's about. He thinks he'll be at least a flex for fantasy managers this year. And I could kind of see him having some games where he catches 4 passes and one of the passes is a 15-yard touchdown. And that's what makes the difference. So probably his average stat line will be around like 8 or 9 PPR points, but he'll have some gusts into the 15, 16 point range as long as Moore and Allen are healthy. And that's somebody that you put on your bench. So around pick 100 is where I'd go with Rome Odunze. All the other receivers that you mentioned, Velus Jones caught a really nice deep ball right after an interception. It was the very next throw from Caleb Williams. Williams placed it very well for Velus, but I don't think he's going to end up playing a lot on offense. Freddie Swain is there. If he makes a team, he might be a backup receiver. There's a receiver named Nasimba
Webster. Yeah, Nasimba
Yeah,
Webster.
he was running with the twos, and he didn't look too bad, in my opinion.
No?
So maybe he's got a chance to be that 4th receiver for Chicago. So they've got some options behind those first 3 guys, but it's those first 3 guys that are going to end up playing the most. They're very, very talented, and Caleb Williams is lucky to have them to throw to.
It sounds like at least early on in camp that DJ Moore and Odunze had the best rapport and chemistry with Williams, and Allen was lacking a bit. Do you think that's, maybe Allen's running more timing routes? Do you think that's why just the usage right now? Or
I think it's just like opportunities to throw with Caleb. I think Keenan hasn't had as many as Moore and Odunze have, and that might be why. But because he didn't have timing down now, doesn't mean that he won't have timing down by September 1st. We're recording this on July 1st. So September 1st might be when he'll be fine. So I don't see that as a real big hindrance for Keenan Allen as much as I do what his role will be, how he'll be used in the offense. His ADOT's not going to be that high. I don't know how well he'll do after the catch. You look good playing after the catch when you're in a mini camp practice where you can't hit. How he looks in game action will be very different.
I worry. Like, I know AJ Brown kind of broke the mold and he was good in his first year, but we've seen a lot of veteran receivers struggle first year with a new team. They sometimes, they're set in their ways and it takes a while to adapt.
Sure. One of those receivers who did do well with their first team was DJ Moore.
That's true.
And he did it last year with a worse quarterback than he's going to have this year. So I get where you're coming from with Keenan Allen. I know people are used to drafting him. I think a top 50 pick in PPR is too early for Keenan Allen, which is something I would have never said if he were still in LA.
Yeah, it's a different world we're living in. All right, tight ends here. We've got Cole Kmet, tight end 6 last year, 16 this year. It seems like to me, at least in my drafts, he's going way earlier. You get to the range where it's the group that it's Kittle, Njoku. There's a few others in that group, but it feels like to me he's always the end of that group, more like 10, 11 instead of 16. He's got Gerald Everett, Mercedes Lewis, and Steven Carlson behind him. Everett, does he worry you for Kmet? If you're in on Kmet, are you in on Kmet, I guess? What are your thoughts?
I am way out on Cole Kmet.
Thank you. I thought it was just me.
No, it is for all the reasons that you already know and for reasons that you don't quite yet know. Okay. And I will tell you all those reasons now.
Please do.
Last year, Cole Kmet was number 2 on the Bears in targets. Do you think he'll be number 2 on the Bears in targets this year?
He might be number 5.
He might be number 5 on the Bears in targets. And that's kind of a problem unless everybody's getting 140 targets in Chicago. And I don't think that's going to happen. So that's strike one against him is that offense is going to look drastically different than what it looked like last year because they have more pieces on offense than they had last year. At minicamp, Kmet only practiced one day. He was on the stationary bike the other 2 days. He had some sort of injury. They didn't disclose what the injury was. Didn't seem like they were taking it very serious. Felt precautionary. But on the first day, there were a lot of 2 tight end formations. I mentioned this earlier when I was talking about Keenan Allen. And Gerald Everett, if you've watched Gerald Everett, number one, you've been disappointed when you've done it. But number 2, he's a move tight end. He's not somebody that's going to stay on the line and block. Komet can block. And so I think his role is changing this year. And Everett will take some of that tight end target volume away from Cole Komet. And that hurts Cole Komet even more. So I'm basically at the point now where I view Komet as touchdown or bust type of fantasy tight end, not somebody that I'd want to have as my starter in week one. I'm looking at my tight end rankings. I've got names I would have never dreamed putting ahead of Cole Komet, but Komet's been relegated to a smaller role. I don't want to spend even a pick in round 10 on Komet, knowing that he could be absolutely limited to 3 targets a game in that offense. And why would they use Komet? Like they'll use him, Aaron, when a matchup is right. Okay, when they're playing a team that might be just depleted at linebacker or safety, sure, that makes some sense. But then again, if a team's depleted at those positions, wouldn't you try to create a matchup with Keenan Allen against those positions? I would try like heck. And so why would you use Komet when you could use somebody who's more explosive? And yes, Keenan Allen, even at his age, more explosive than Cole Komet.
There's just this, you're going to get clipped on this one, and this is going to be on Twitter. I know, because you've hit the confirmation bias here. I see him going in the, like I said, tight end 10 to 13 range, and I just thought that's too high. Even I'm not a big believer in Gerald Everett, but a second tight end, they're going to change his role slightly. They've got way too much talent at wide receiver. They added DeAndre Swift, a rookie quarterback. I just don't see how he is worth this value. And I've been out and everywhere he's been going way higher, and I have no shares. And I'm glad to finally hear someone else say it. So that will transition us, I guess. Based on what their current ADP is, I tried to make it as big as I could. Just, ballpark. I'm sure you've done enough drafts. Who's someone on this roster you'd like to target, and who's someone you'd like to avoid?
Well, can I use Cole Komet as the avoid?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I think that goes without saying. And I think ADP is relative to this. So I might ask you to just tell me what the ADPs are for some of these people. Tell me what the ADP is for DeAndre Swift, Aaron, because that's the one I might tell you to avoid.
RB21.
Yeah, I'm out.
Okay, you are out.
I'm out. I've got him at RB27. I'm not the biggest Ramondre Stevenson fan in the world. I would take Ramondre Stevenson ahead of DeAndre Swift. I know a lot of people are like grossed out with the idea of drafting Najee Harris. I'm drafting Najee Harris ahead of DeAndre Swift. Aaron Jones might have only one working hamstring. We just don't know. But Aaron Jones is someone that I would take ahead of DeAndre Swift. And this is all, July 1st talk.
Yeah.
Things can happen. We talked about it on our show, Fantasy Football Today. What happens if Khalil Herbert gets traded? Well, am I still going to be this nervous about DeAndre Swift? Probably not. I'll probably be more excited about DeAndre Swift. And then maybe RB21 could make some sense, especially in full PPR.
Yeah.
But until then, it's too many players, too many guys at running back that hold back DeAndre Swift's upside, provided that he actually stays healthy for a full season.
All right. And do you have a target here? Someone on this roster? Well, I guess I could start with the receivers. ADPs are wide receiver 17 for DJ Moore, 25 for Keenan Allen, 46 for Rome Odunze. If you want Caleb, it's QB 16. I can't really see anybody else you'd really probably be targeting. Any thoughts?
Where is Freddie Swain? No,
I don't even have him on here. So.
DJ Moore is probably appropriately ranked in ADP at 17. I'd still see him as a late round 3 type of wide receiver. He's a number 2 wide receiver in fantasy, not a number 1 guy, but somebody who I still think can maybe even take a step forward in his efficiency with Caleb Williams. I was at Bears minicamp, not just this spring, but last spring too. And Caleb Williams is a better thrower than Justin Fields. I don't think that I'm, shaking up the world with that statement, Aaron. But I do believe that if DJ Moore's quality of target is improving with Caleb Williams, then the end result will be better efficiency and hopefully some better consistency, even if the target volume goes down. And so I'll pin myself to DJ Moore here as a late round 3 pick.
This is a scary roster that I find I don't have a whole lot of shares in. There's too many weapons. A lot of them are a little overvalued. It's sad. Never thought it, but I have a lot more shares of teams like the Commanders, Panthers, Steelers. Like you said, guys like Najee, just a lot lower price that have a lot higher upside here. I know I'm keeping you kind of long, so I'll kind of get to it. We will just hit the schedule here for the Bears. I'll get a win and a loss from you for each game, and we'll see how you think the Bears play out.
Sure.
Spoiler alert, if you give the Bears less than 12 wins, you're going to have them projected as the second worst team in the NFL, according to the rest of the experts who've been on this show, because every team is winning 12 or 13 games. So let's start with week 1, home to the Titans.
I think that's a win for them. I know the
See, they're
Tennessee
already undefeated for you.
Yeah, here we go. I think that Tennessee's defense still has a lot of work to do. Their offense should be fun, but first game playing together against the Bears. Here's another point that I want to make from Bears minicamp. Their defense is going to be better than you think. And that you
Oh,
started
yeah?
to see it last season once they got Montez Sweat, but they're going to get contributions from guys you haven't heard of yet on that defensive line. They've got good linebackers, and their secondary is really strong. Do not be surprised if you start the Bears DST at points during your fantasy season. And dare I say, they're usable week 1 against Tennessee. So you could actually draft them with your last pick and feel pretty good about the matchup against the Titans.
They are currently my sleeper. I have them in my Fantasy Pros draft rankings as DST 11. So
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you say that. I love some of the players they've got. Okay, week 2 at Houston.
I think that's going to be a loss for them. I really believe in this Texans team on both sides of the ball. I've got my own copy of the schedule here. I just want to see who the team plays the week before they play Chicago to see if there's a chance of a letdown or anything like that. Too soon in the season to start thinking that way with the Texans. They play at Indy week 1. They'll probably win that game. Houston will be 2-1. Chicago will be 1-1.
All right, and then the Bears get Indy in Indy week 3. Thoughts there?
And I think that Indy is going to be hungry for a win. They play at Green Bay in week 2. They might be 0-2 going into that game against Chicago. I'm going to give the Colts the win.
All right, week 4, they host the Rams.
And LA will have played San Francisco the week before. That's probably a loss. This is going to be a tough one. But the Rams are another team that I like a lot this year. I'm going to give the Rams the win. So now suddenly Chicago's 1-3.
Oh, that's not good compared to the other 13 win teams in this league.
I'm sorry. But guess what? Week 5, I like their chances.
All right. So week 5, can I put you down for a W against the Panthers?
Yeah, I got a feeling Carolina, it doesn't matter who they play from week to week, they're going to have a hard time finding wins. They are going to be a better team, but not one that I'm excited about. So Chicago beats Carolina.
And week 6, it says they are home to the Jags, but judging by the time, it is a overseas game. Thoughts here?
And this is the first of 2 overseas games for Jacksonville, so it's not like they'll have an advantage in this game. I'm nervous about the Jaguars this year, and I'm worried that they might flub some games. I'm going to give this one to Chicago. I'm going to say the Bears beat Jacksonville in London.
They are 3-3 heading into the bye week. Week 8, they come out at Washington.
Rested on the bye, but Washington will have played Carolina the week before. It's their second straight home game. I think the Commanders are going to be better than people think, and this is going to be a battle between the 2 rookie quarterbacks. I'll take the Commanders to win this game.
All right. Week 9 at Arizona.
This is another tough one, and I believe the Cardinals could be rolling at this point. They'll be at Miami the week before. That might be a win for them. Probably not. That's probably a loss. I think the Dolphins will just outscore them. Their defense isn't that good. High-scoring game. The Bears find a way to win in Arizona, don't they? I'm going to give them the win. I was going to say loss, but I'm going to change it to a win.
I wrote it down as loss. You had me hedging that you were going to say loss there, and you threw me a curveball. All right. After that,
at the very end.
Yeah. After the swerve, week 10, home against the Pats.
Should be a win. New England's going to be a disaster.
I would hope so. Week 11.
5-4?
5-4. Yep.
All right. So I still got a chance to get them to 13 wins.
Oh, Lord. 2 against the Lions and 1 against the Niners. If you get them to 13 or 12, 13 wins, I'll be impressed.
You'll kick me off your show.
No. You're Dave Richard. I'm not doing that. You're one of my favorites, Dave. You can say whatever you want. And last year, when I wanted to kick you off my show because I thought you were wrong, it turned out I was wrong. So I'll give you the benefit of the doubt here if you say that.
Okay. So they've got Green Bay next, right?
Yeah, home against Green Bay.
Green Bay is going to beat them.
All right. Week 12, home to the Vikings.
Let's see. Week 12, Minnesota will be coming off the game at Tennessee, and then they're on the road at Chicago. It's 3 in a row on the road for Minnesota. That's a win for the Bears against
Ooh,
the Vikings.
I like it.
I wonder if J.J. McCarthy will be starting by then.
I was thinking the same thing. Week 13 at Detroit. Is
On
this Thanksgiving? Yeah.
Short
Okay.
week. I bet they give Detroit a game, but the Lions win.
All right. I thought it was Thanksgiving. Week 14. That's a tough back-to-back there. Week 14, they go to San Fran.
Well, on the plus side, they've got time on after
Yep.
their game against Detroit, so they'll be a little bit more rested, but they're going to lose to the 49ers. They're not winning that game.
Week 15 at Minnesota.
Normally, I like to split the divisional games for teams, and I think I'm going to do it here too. I think the Vikings will find a way to beat Chicago and Minnesota.
All righty. So that you have them at 6 and 8. Week 16, they are home to the Lions now.
And I'm sure the Lions are going to be competing for a playoff spot. The Bears clinging to their playoff life. They're not going to get there. Tough home loss for the Bears.
See, I agree with everything you said, but I live near Detroit and I still have a little bit of the remnants of same old Lions in me, and that reeks of a game they're going to choke. But I guess we'll see if the Dan Campbell Lions are really different.
Well, remember, the week before, Detroit plays Buffalo at home. In fact, between their games against Chicago, they've got Green Bay at home and then Buffalo at home. I don't think Detroit's going to win all 3 of those games. They might win 2. Well, they might.
All right, week 17.
Chicago win.
17, home to the Seahawks.
That's one I think that they could win. Seattle will be coming off a game against Minnesota. That might be a win for them. I'm going to give Chicago the win there. It'll be their last win of the season.
They close it out week 18. You're supposed to say spoiler alert with that, Dave. Week 18 at Green Bay.
No, they're going to lose to the Packers. Packers are going to sweep them this year. Packers might need that week 18 game to clinch the NFC North, something like that. And Chicago is just going to go into hibernation. So what is that, 7 and 10?
8 and 9. You have them at 8 and 9. So
okay.
That's one of the more realistic projections here. So I appreciate that.
Sure.
All right, Dave, I've kept you far too long here. You want to, promote anything you've got coming out this week before we go?
I don't have anything coming out this week other than our YouTube stream of Fantasy Football Today. If you've heard of YouTube, and let's face it, everybody has, you know that there's some awesome content on there, including this show, the one you're watching right now. Join us on Fantasy Football Today. We have live streams daily. Usually we're live at about 10 a.m. Try and talk with our audience in real time, but certainly give a lot of fantasy information to help you win your league, just like you get here from the Mad Science Lab. Look for it on YouTube. Search for Fantasy Football Today and like and subscribe to #AskFFT.
Well, thank you very much, Dave. I appreciate you stopping in. If you want to check out any of these team pages, head over to Fantasy Football Universe, where we've got everything from schedules, depth charts on offense and defense, and this interesting little weather widget. Once we get into season and there's actual games, those update automatically with the most up-to-date weather to impact your decisions. I'm a big kicker guy, so that helps me. That's why I put it there. Thank you, Dave, for joining me, and thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Take care, and we'll see you next time.